After victory at the Combat of the 30, the French faced devastating raids from England's Black Prince. But France's King John II was closing in. Jean finally caught the English near the city of Poitiers in September 1356. The French army outnumbered the English by thousands. King Jean himself joined the fight, but what seemed a certain victory for France soon turned into a nightmare. The English longbow devastated the mighty French army. An endless hail of arrows gutted the main French force. Then the English captured King Jean. The fight was over. The Battle of Poitiers was another catastrophic defeat for the French. The English had destroyed most of France's nobility in a single day. Now they turned their attention towards taking the French capital, Paris. The invaders marched unopposed towards Paris. The remains of some of the medieval walls of Paris still stand today. As the English army approached, the terrified locals sought shelter behind these defenses. Could France's capital withstand the full might of the Black Prince's army? The English Black Prince had raided the French countryside without mercy, and now his army had come for the capital. With the English on their doorstep, it fell to the French army and the people of Paris to defend the walls of their proud city. Hoping to avoid open battle, the French began fortifying the city, manning the walls and calling every available soldier to his post. As the French hastened their preparations, several detachments of English soldiers were spotted closing in on the city.
Compagnon, preste pour la besogne. Nos deguerpissons, mult avance, que atre. Chasse comme il vous compagnon. Vectons nos à la rue. Vigence de Volcher, soyez prêts. Qu'est-ce que demande?
Laisse-moi exploiter. Si, les exploiteurs. Advertence, tout le monde. Lors devant nos à l'air. Oyez, tout le monde. Si, comme volette. À votre commandement. Pour vous servir. Secours! Petite!
Hoping to avoid open battle, the French began fortifying the city, manning the walls and calling every available soldier to his post. As the French hastened their preparations, several detachments of English soldiers were spotted closing in on the city.
Laissez-moi exploiter. Manance, Ovronstone. Allons, Manance.
En besoin. Oil, c'est juste. Que faut-il donc? Besoin.
Oh, me faut
Oh, me faut train. Si, comme volets. Baillez, que faut-il?
Laissez-moi
Advertence, tout le monde. Marchez arrière, moi. En besoin. Baillez.
besoin. Oh, me faut trahir. À votre commande.
Oil, oh, me besoin à faire.
Advertance tout le monde. Pour vous servir.
En besoin à faire.
Oil, messieurs. Besoin de nous attendre, Manance. Si, comme volets.
Oh, me faut oil. Que faut?
Besoin à faire. Si, comme volets.
Baillez de moi.
Oh, me
Oil. Que faut? En besoin. Oh, baillez de moi. Que faut-il donc besoigner? En besoin. Besoigner à faire.
Que
Oil. Mestière de moi. Oh, baillez. Oh, oil.
The English showed no mercy, burning their way to Paris via 3 routes, each of which was home to villages and farms that supplied the capital.
Oh, me faut tra.
Baillez-moi besoin.
Oh, yes.
Marchez arrière moi, très tous.
En besoin. Fouillers, ma toute.
Oh, yes, les ordonnances. Si vous exploitiez. Pour vous servir. Chevalier Bastille. Oh, yes, tout le monde. Toast ja, Laurens. Manuelas. Manans, preis da œuvrer.
En besoin.
Advertance tout le monde. 13 belles Manuel. Lors Batige s'estuie. Lors Batige s'estuie. Chevalier Bastille.
Having struck out at the English front line, the French had slowed the enemy's advance.
En besoin. Attendez les commandements. Les guerres puissantes, man.
Besoin à faire. Très sens nul arrest.
Oil, messieurs des puissants voués.
De me rire.
Toast ja, Laurens. Nuevas nuits. Belle œuvre. Si veille outchamp.
Oh, me faut train. Lors Batige s'estue. Ardu besoin en grande terre.
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Laissez-moi exploiter.
Lars bâti de s'estuer. On a un frère.
As-tu besoin d'un grand air?
Le version côté archer. Le version côté archer. Très porteur. Archers, Oyez.
Arbelestre, à chest mes boss.
Dictez-moi une bersaise.
Oyez les ordonnances.
Mon arc est
Versailles.
Dictez-moi une bersaise.
As the French continued to rally their army, the English took the last of the surrounding villages and had almost encircled Paris.
Reste pour la besogne, Manance. Manance, reste à ouvrir.
With the countryside in flames and the English at the city gates, the French army steeled themselves for battle. Now came the capital's true test, with the mighty walls of Paris holed against a fearsome English siege.
Archers, prenez vos armes. Archers, les comme archers, allons vraiment.
Dicte-moi ma besogne.
The Parisian Guard raised the alarm as the English began their first assault on the city walls.
Oyez bien, compagnon. Compagnon, ben ici les commandements.
Le version
Ouais, ouais,
côté
ouais.
archer.
Chest mes boss, antes par fuera.
Archers, j'obtiens père. Archers, on déguerpit, Archers.
The French army fought valiantly, repelling the first English attack.
Arbelestre, à chest mes boss. Surveille. À chest mes boss. Compagnon, nos allons.
Dictez-moi une bersaise.
Me mets à la voie. Ben ici les commandements. À chest mes boss, Arbelestre. Ouais, sunt. Chacune, envoyez vers notre porte. Chest. Arbelestre paré. Compagnon, ben ici laisse. Je gagne mon gage. Jets Metz vos habillement. Avant au belestière.
Oyez, tout le monde.
Oui, da.
Tous de gars là, Oyez. Mon arme est prête.
Oh yes, les ordonnances.
Mon arme est prête. Faut-il archer?
Ici, laisse commandement. Adjustment boss.
Veste portrait.
Autre Versailles.
Veste portrait.
Sur quoi me faut-il traire?
De l'est où faut-il archer?
Oh yes, les ordonnances. Lors devance nos salaires.
Die Schemolcher sont prêts.
De l'est où faut-il archer?
Die Schemolcher, escouten. Schemolcher, en pleine course. Adjustment boss. Ça comme peignot. Oral man. Anos viquetor.
Veste portrait. Versailles.
Une autre Versailles.
De l'est où faut-il archer?
En besoin.
Où faut-il archer?
Although the walls of Paris had been breached, the French could still hold the city, so long as its mighty landmarks did not fall.
Aye, messieurs de moi.
The French defense of their capital held firm, wearing down the English invaders one by one.
Compagnon, Otalo!
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Bien, bien, Weiss. Si, Weiss, exploiteur. À votre commandement, j'exploite les réparements.
Dicte-moi mon Versailles.
Giovanni Basti. Tostia Lores. Tostia Lores.
Soyez prêts, je suis votre serveuse.
Advertance, tout le monde. Allons, ça presse tous.
Chevalier, reste pour entier, reste tous prêts. Sommes en ordonnance.
Besoigne après.
Advertance seulement. Allons, ça, Trestoutz. Je veux ça à votre commandement.
Oyez, tous le monde.
Advertance seulement. Allons, ça, Trestoutz.
Advertance, tout le monde. Vequer à aucun gibière.
Compagnon, reste pour la besoin.
Oyez, mettons-nous à la voie, bien brillamment.
Oh, me faut traiter.
Oyez.
Povons avoir un mestier des bois.
The enemy grew ever more desperate as their ranks thinned and their hopes of victory faded.
Dicte-moi mon Versailles.
Obéir, c'est vertu. Dictez-moi une Versailles. À Aubelestier, à Pointe-Basse.
Mon arc est prêt. Compagnon, ayez bien cœur. De vers où faut-il archier? Acoustrez-vous par des spartiers. Voir à Parmain.
Jetsmet muss habiller.
Venez-vous. Chessmet Boss! Archer! Fusillez!
Jetsmet muss Aubelest, comme il vous plaît. Avance, Aubelestien. Sibel! Unite! Aubelestien, fermez!
Archer!
Allons, informez! Je gagne mon gate! Aubelestien, à pointe d'espace! Ta compagnon! Hors Advent! Aubelestre, à Chessmet Boss! Cesse conquester! À demi marching! Aubelestier, à pointe d'espace! Jetsmet muss habiller, Aubelestier!
Chevalière, cesse le temps d'Adventiel.
Archer, le ferai-je donc?
À l'assaut vostre service.
À Chessmet des Spartans, vraiment! Comme il vous plaît!
À Chessmet vos compagnons. À Chessmet vos. À l'assaut, chevalier. Avertissez votre courage, compagnons. Incontinent. Je suis votre service. Si comme votre membreuse. Assaillez vos armées. Nous allons.
Jetsmet muss ouvrir! Informez! Aubelestier, à pointe d'espace!
Thomas und Allons. L'ennemi est away.
Defeated and demoralized by the strength of the French defense, the Black Prince's army abandoned their siege of the capital. Paris celebrated victory, but this was not the last test the French would face in their struggle to win the war. The battlefields of the 100 Years' War were full of danger. To defend against these weapons, a new type of armor was developed: plate armor.
Plate armor clad the knight in an articulating exoskeleton of hardened steel. A hard outer shell that still flexes and moves with the body.
It provided impressive protection and was an extraordinary technological achievement.
Now, one of the ways that armor gets its strength is through shape. Both of these pieces are made out the exact same thickness as steel, but I can show you there's one stronger than the other. Here's the one with no shape. You see it buckles immediately. If I swap it for one that's been forged to have strength and shape, you can see it's much stronger. It's going nowhere.
It wasn't just the shape that gave it strength. It was also how the metal was treated by the armorer.
Now, the benefits of using heat is it obviously makes the piece more plastic, more ductile, lets me shape it. But but the fuel also adds layers of carbon into the outer surface. This helps me increase the hardness and strength of the material.
The art of the armorer was being able to judge the temperature of the metal by eye, managing the heat to create resilience in the metal. The combination of heat-treated metal and rigid shapes meant that armor didn't need to be so thick and heavy, making it much easier to fight in. But good quality plate armor did have its downside. It was very expensive.
Now, not everyone could afford full steel plate armor. For the common man, there is the brigandine. Now, these are made up of overlapping steel plates that are then riveted through a textile outer. This gives you a much bigger range of movement, but is limited and is not as strong as a full steel breastplate. That said, it is much cheaper and much easier to maintain.
At its best, the armored knight was invincible. But armor didn't just provide defense. It was also a weapon and an expression of a knight's power and prestige. Armor transformed its wearer into a work of art. The walls of Paris held out against the English onslaught. England's King Edward and the Black Prince abandoned the siege. They marched towards Chartres to try their luck at conquering a less formidable target. But before they could attack, a violent storm hit the army. Killing 1,000 English soldiers in a tempest of hail and freezing winds. To Edward, this Black Monday disaster seemed like divine retribution. A sign that it was time to stop waging war and make peace with France's King Jean. But even as peace between kings was reached, the people of France were still living in bloodshed and turmoil. Between 1358 and 1370, France was in chaos. Peasant uprisings, rampaging bands of mercenaries, and civil war ravaged the country. Peasants rose in rebellion, killing their lords and wreaking havoc. Mercenary bands also roamed the land. Known as routiers, they had once been hired by the English to fight against the French, but were cut loose when peace was reached. They systematically ravaged and pillaged towns across France. And with King Jean prisoner in England, his son Charles the Dauphin faced homegrown attacks on his rule by powerful French lords, beset from all sides. The Dauphin's forces had to regain control over their own country. Having only recently been crowned King of France, Charles V dispatched his army to the French-held village of Évreux to forge order from chaos. From here, the army would move to extinguish three major threats. Bands of roving mercenaries harrying the countryside, a peasant uprising, and attacks from a rival for the French crown, Charles of Navarre. The French army would start by reclaiming the rebel-held villages of Cocherel, Jouy, and Croissy.
Labour Hansen, Parat pour Laboura.
Et chez mandement. Labour. Quid me. Lire faccio.
Mandesquet.
Parat pour venir.
Attention! Novos...
Cursores! Cursores!
Quid labour. Prate terra. Bene.
Labour Skito.
Mandesqued. Vado labourar. Parats pour labourar.
Tous audite. Dams de retournar. Movamos, vale tous. Cose sera ma sonata. Qued, mais...
Tous audite. Yaffect. Io ma sono la cose. Si, bene.
Qued Labour?
Si sommes. Cose sera ma...
Parats pour Labourar. Vado Labourar. Buon Labour.
Mandesqued. Sur moi de labour. Sito.
Me plect.
Parats pour labourar. Fido, si. Quito. Vado labourar.
As the French army struggled to regain control of the countryside, they were struck by a band of English routiers. These mercenaries had been cut loose by the English army and were plundering the countryside in order to make a living.
Parat pour venir. Ici va tost. C'est combatteria.
Les Smelsons sont ici!
Parate equites! Equites ascendentisi! Equites in avant! Secund mandement! Si comprendo!
The French forces eliminated the routier attack, but more were still raiding the countryside in search of provisions and riches. The routier demanded payment from the French, or they would continue their horrifying raids.
Si comprendo. Equites in avant! Est facile, cavalier! Si volies! Quitamus! Est facile, cavalier!
L'ennemi viennent!
Pace, move!
Veillance, l'ennemi!
Quitamus!
In taking the village of Jouy, the French army was closer to stemming the peasant rebellion and regaining control.
Quitamus! Come mandes!
The village of Croissy, rich in gold deposits, was a crucial town for the French to reclaim.
me mente.
Montesquieu? Io ma sono la cosa.
Equite sul fondo! Ok!
The French army defeated the rebels at Poissy and took control of the gold-rich village. The central monastery town of Cocherel was still under the control of rebel peasants. The French army would have to take it before they could launch an assault on Charles of Navarre.
Six hommes, un assial pour la batteria. Colonnes sont ici. Felice et beate. Montesquieu, seco materia. Movo. Camino.
La bourse Perrin.
Cito.
The French paid off the routier and were free of further raids.
Io ma sono la cosa. Parat pour venir. Parat.
Attention. Novos ordines.
Parade pour venir.
Retourno comme materia.
Bell'idea, equite!
Six hommes, un assial pour la batteria.
Wait, me?
Ordine tenets.
Quid me? Moven schito. Parats pour laborar. Parade pour venir. Inherence. Seco materia.
La bourse Perrins.
Quoi de labour?
Quoi de labour?
Cos'è sarà massonata?
Labour spérance. Cose sera mas.
La bourse Perrins. Cos'è sarà massonata?
Labour spérance. Vado laborar.
Si sommes. Come sono la cose?
Quid me?
Quid me? Ascolte bene! Parats pour la bourrard. Bravo.
Buon labour.
Vado la bourrard.
Quid labour? Prat et terra, bene.
Parat pour venir.
Sagita in arco.
Come sono la cose?
Che mandes?
Mondes qued? Benefect.
Che mandes? Sagita in arco.
Dolme bien.
Parats?
Ambula. Attention. Novos ordines. Second mandement. Pace mauvais.
Artière.
Parat pour venir.
Che mandes? Artière parat.
Out es facile, cavalier. Comme Mondes. Ordine tenets.
Momentesi, archière.
Intendo.
Audite, militaire. Equites. In avant.
Arco parat. Parate, archière. Vade, archière. Reparate, archiers. Bene, bene. Che mandes? Archière parat.
Parle-moi bien.
Perfecte.
Si, comprendo.
En queste de battaglia! Equites attendant ici!
The French army took control of the rebel villages, and the peasant uprising was subdued.
Non, ici le ferait tantôt.
But to keep control over the region, they would need to defend its center of influence, the monastery at Cocherel.
L'heure est de besoigner. Avant.
Northeast of Cocherel, Charles of Navarre's army had established a fortified camp. The King of Navarre sought to make himself ruler of France as well. He intended to press his claim by destroying the newly arrived royal forces.
Incontinent. Pour votre service. Si comme vos voldres.
Dictes vos commandement.
Accespets vos competentre jetzt vos à moi. Attendez les... Allons! L'ennemi est away!
Soyons.
Feici les commandements. Oui, oui.
Pushing up the hillside, the French discovered Charles of Navarre's camp. His front line had the high ground and was made up entirely of archers. The French would have to think carefully about how to approach the stronghold.
Les commandements guet! Obéis aux commandements!
French army had repelled Charles of Navarre, stemmed the revolt, and held back the raids of the Routiers. In the struggle for control over France's lands, the king still clung to power. The walls of Paris held out against the English onslaught. England's King Edward and the Black Prince abandoned the siege. A war horse was no ordinary horse. In battle, it was a knight's comrade in arms. By nature, horses are prey animals, but the warhorse had to become a predator. They had to be aggressive and fearless, to charge enemy lines and to trample anyone in their way. To achieve this, they were specially bred and highly trained to fight, to lash out with their hooves on command. This meant warhorses were expensive and so conveyed high status.
War horses were incredibly strong and powerful, but they were also vulnerable. This is a really big target, and it's much easier to shoot a horse than it is to hit its rider. So just as men wore armor, horses wore armor too.
A knight didn't ride his warhorse on the road to battle. It was far too valuable. Instead, they were led by the knight's groom. A knight would take multiple war horses on campaign, as he would need to change to a fresh horse several times during battle. Once geared up, the knight, his horse, and his weapons became a highly effective system.
The heavy cavalry lance had a small ring called a graper, and this locks into my arm, forming a hard linkage, so that the lance can't shoot backwards on impact.
The war saddle was also crucial. With its high back, it locked the rider to the horse.
This means with the graper and the saddle, horse, man, and weapon are all locked together to create one giant horse-powered projectile.
The main purpose of heavy cavalry was to charge straight into the enemy and smash through their lines. The impact charge crashed into an enemy with terrifying force. It required horses with exceptional courage and power. With rebels and raiders eliminated at Cocherel, King Charles V faced one last threat to France: the relentless English invaders. Word arrived that the English army was weak and scattered, divided by infighting. The king quickly directed his army to chase down the old enemy of France at Pont-Valin. The French town of Pontvalin lay directly in the path of marauding English soldiers on the hunt for loot. The town's only hope of survival lay with the French forces camped nearby. The French quickly prepared to ambush the disorganized English raiders and defend Pontvalin from ruin.
Parate. Allons-y.
Tous? Si, comprendo. Vado pour Mercaré. Mondesqued? Colonnes? Mauvais colonnes.
The main English army thundered into the valley. They paused to rest beyond the town before launching their raid.
Colonnes, partier. Parates, servientes.
Ambulance.
Venies, servientes.
Parade pour venir. Si, bene. Vido, si. Ineranzi. Cose sera massona.
Odi, in avant, servientes. Ambulance.
Quid me? Ci sommes. Felice et beat. Benefect. Vado laborar.
The first group of English raiders began their attacks on the outlying farms. After destroying the farms, they would attack the town of Pontvalin.
Homes, preparate.
Obedio.
In avant, servientes. En lavara!
Escolte bene. Ok. Io ma sono la cosa. Labor speranza. Cose sarà massonata. Io ma sono la cosa. Vado laborar. Io ma sono la parat pour laborar. E c'è l'imandement. Quid labor?
Homes, preparate.
Mandesquid.
Veillance l'inimi!
Cose sera ma sonata. Si soves. Benefect. Felice et beat. Escolte bene. Vado lavorare.
Nintendo! Allons-y.
Ecce li mandement. Me plect.
Si somes.
L'amour féral. Parate pour laborar. Tuts audite. Buona sial pour la batteria. Tuts audite. Seco materia. Escolte bene. Mandemans, colones. Si somes. Colones, returno con materia. Comprendo.
More scattered English raiders arrived and made their way towards Pontvalin.
Bene, bene. Venies, servientes. Audience. Ogedite, sin retornar. Sagita in arco.
Escolte bene. Ici va toast.
Colones, parentis.
Parate. Allons-y. Ambulance. In avant, servientes. Venies, servientes. Estro azul. Preparate, arquer. Moment ici, arquer. Parate, arquer. Parate.
Ecceli mandement.
Ecceli
Bon vamos, valez tous. Coligans bagas.
Préparate, Arkiers. Sagimaino parat. Momentier. In avant, Arkier. Parat. Parate, Arkier, Arkier. In avant. Au medio. Vade, Arkier. Ambula. Yep, de Seguita. Si, Parat. Momentesi, Arkier. Preparate, Arkier. Parate, Arkier. Ambula. Prépare in avant, Arkier. Momentesi, Arkier. Audience.
Cavalarios parat.
Coué de la boue.
Arkier, Parat.
More scattered English raiders arrived and made their way towards Pontvalin.
Parat. Parate, Arkier. Obedio. Parat, Arkier. In avant. Ambula. Nintendo. Arkier. In avant. Préparate, Arkier. Moment ici, Arkier.
Secco Macadersi, boys. Buonasera pour la materia. Barats pour la bourra. Toutes sodite. Ecceli, sì, bene. Cos'è sera massonata? Come sono la cose? Laboranza in limans. Vado labura. Sur moi de mans. Bene.
Parate, Arkiers.
Parat. Une amon, cavalarios.
Mandesqued. Cose sera massona.
Odite. Scarra formata.
Parat pour la bourra.
Arkier, Parate.
La bourse Speranza. Camino. Vado la bourra.
Momentesi, Arkier. Momentesi, Arkier. In avant. Preparate, archers. Audience! Parate, archers! Preparate!
Cavalario, tu l'avances.
Saguita in arco.
Parade Porvenir. Movenskito.
Archers, parate.
Io ma sono la cosa.
Tiens, tes cavales.
Saguita in arco.
Quoi? Mais
Demande. Saguita in arco.
parade Porvenir. Buon labour.
Demande.
Ci sommes. Quelle
Archers, parate. Saguita in arco.
The English army chose their moment and began to close in on Pontvala.
Cose sera massona.
Odin, au meglio.
Parate.
Attenzione.
Parate, fade, parate, archers. Bene, bene. Archers, parate.
Mandesqued. Buon labour.
Demande. Saguita in
Buon
arco.
labour, movo.
Bene, Odin. Quiete, cavals. Arcaiche, cavalario.
Saguita in arco. Archers, parate. Arco, parate. Archers, saguita in arco. Demande. Saguita in parate. Saguita in arco. parat. Sakita in arco. Quemandes. Sakita in arco. Arco parat. Quemandes. Sakita in arco. Arco parat. Arrière parat. Arrière parat. Sakita in arco. Arco parat. Arrière parat. Momentesi, Arquier. Angola. In avant, Arquier. Arrière parat. Angola. Sakita in arco. Preparate, Obedio. Parate, Arquier. In avant, Arquier. Bene, bene. Arquier parat. Momentesi, Arquier. Allez, Arquier. Allez, Arquier. Il a eu Arquier. Préparate, Arquier. Momentesi, Arquier. Préparate, Arquier. Oh, mon Dieu. Parate, Arquier.
After a hard-won battle against a scattered enemy, the French succeeded in halting the English chevauchée at Pontvalin. The English army was not invincible. The French cause was not yet lost. Longbows were powerful weapons, but keeping archers supplied with ammunition was a major undertaking.
This is a modern arrow. Small and lightweight. Pretty much what everyone shoots these days. Compared to this, medieval war arrow. Look at the size of this thing. It's a beast.
A medieval army might need more than 1 million war arrows on campaign, and each one had to be made by hand. It was a labor-intensive business, and the person who did it was called a fletcher. First, a log is split into square staves. Then the fletcher uses a plane to start roughing out the shape.
Ugh, how do I get it round?
Not only have you got to make it round, you've got to make it bobtailed. Look at that.
Bobtailed?
You see that's coming down thinner down that end? There's a natural taper coming down there to that end.
A plane with a curved blade is used to create the taper. This makes the arrow aerodynamic.
This is an incredibly painstaking process for one arrow.
Most of them are just for one shot as well.
Next, a slot is cut to receive a piece of horn. The horn reinforces the nock. That's the notch that fits the arrow to the bowstring. Without the horn insert, the power of a heavy warbow could split and shatter an arrow. Once the horn is in place, the nock is sawn and shaped. Then the fletcher has to attach the feathers to the shaft.
Now what you've got to do is you've got to get rid of the stiffness of the quill. You're going to work it down so it's nice and thin.
So this is dogfish skin?
Yeah, medieval sandpaper.
The feathers are glued in place and then secured with thread. The final process is to arm the arrow with its arrowhead. The person who makes these is called an arrowsmith. From a blank piece of iron, he starts with the part that fits over the arrow shaft. First, he makes the bar flat, then uses a special former to create a socket. The final stage is to hammer out the shape of the head. Arrow stocks had to be prepared far in advance of a campaign. It was impossible to make them in sufficient numbers overnight. A medieval war arrow like this could only be shot from a big, exceptionally powerful bow. And it packed a mighty punch. The French won an overwhelming victory at the Battle of Pontvalin. It was the first time the English had been utterly defeated during the war. But the triumph was short-lived. As England spent the next 60 years amassing French territory through alliances and victories at great battles, such as Agincourt. It seemed that nothing could stop England. Who then could have foreseen that a teenaged girl was about to change the course of history? In 1429, France was in dire straits. Nowhere was it more evident than the besieged city of Orléans. The city was completely surrounded by English-held forts. But just a few days' ride away, here in Chinon, there was potential help. The French royal prince, the Dauphin Charles, was holed up in his fortress and under pressure to ride out to save Orléans. As Charles hesitated, a young peasant girl arrived at his court. Her name was Jeanne d'Arc. She claimed to have received saintly visions, giving her a divine task to help Charles become king and drive the English out of France forever. Charles was skeptical, but was soon convinced of her divinity. And he charged this 17-year-old with the near impossible mission to liberate Orléans. To Jeanne, this was the first step in realizing her God-given destiny. In April 1429, she rode out from Chinon at the head of her army to confront the hated enemy of France. Surrounded by English strongholds, and with its last line of defense under attack, the city of Orléans grew ever more desperate. In France's darkest hour, 17-year-old Jeanne d'Arc arrived with the king's army to liberate a city and prevent the fall of a nation.
Attendez les commandements.
Que faut-il donc besoin?
Oh yes, tout le monde. Oh yes, les ordonnances. Dos dialores.
Bien, bien.
Advertence, tout le monde. Lors pas un besoin.
Oh yes, les commandements. Si fait que sera. Allons ce sens plus attendre.
The English had captured the vital fortification known as Les Tourelles on the south bank of the Loire. Orléans would live or die on its access to supplies. Recapturing Les Tourelles would be key to saving the city.
Bonne besogne est faite.
Oh yes, les assets moins exploités. Pour vos services, je vous amène mes riens.
Coréo, reste fort d'espartir.
Reste en prêt.
Je trai.
Oh yes, tout le monde. Pas y être moins besoin.
Archer, prenez vos armes.
Reste de l'ennemi.
Commandement intensif besoin. Soyez express. Mais ici les ennemis. Avance, sans ralentir. Compagnon, très court comme bataille. Perfect, à la scène. Compagnon, marchez derrière.
Moi et mon Versailles. Reste pour terre. Le vers où projet arrière. Mon arme est prête. Reste pour terre. Le vers où projet arrière. Dicte-moi. Vers où projet arrière.
Au Mereil, messieurs des mouets. Advertance tout le monde. Oui, là. Reste fuir.
Perfect à la sonne. Compagnon, marchette derrière. Puissance, bien ordonnée. Je fais votre commandement.
Having suffered under the English siege for months, Orléans had sent for crucial supplies, but English patrols threatened their arrival at the city. If Orléans hoped to receive the supplies, the French would have to clear the road of English raiders.
Présence, bien ordonnée. Je baisse vos commandements. Perfect, à la sorte.
Dites-moi mon Versailles.
The French eliminated the English raiders, granting the supply convoys safe passage into the city. Each time supplies approached Orléans, English raiders would return to guard the road, hoping to plunder the French goods. The supply convoy arrived in the city, providing the French army with much-needed gold.
Archers, compagnons, ayez bien cœur. Mon artiste, moi mon Versailles.
Soyez prêts. Veichi, compagnon, marchez derrière.
Archers, allons paiement.
Tex, allons en ce sens plus attendre.
Seeing another supply convoy approaching the city, English raiders took up position on the road. The French needed to eliminate the enemy detachment if they hoped to receive the supplies.
Archers, Archers, oyez commandement. Access post, Archers. Archers, en la voie. C'est comme le volet.
Tex, Amon.
Archers, de demeurer, point slats to coin.
Das Pronoms de truc!
Oh, jetzt les ordonnances.
Accordé.
Tous de gars, Lauretz.
Pause. Le soigner.
Los bâtis de s'estuer.
Arquez-moi mon Versailles.
Oh yes, let's commandements.
Eyetskur aux commandements.
Présence, bien ordonnée. Si fait que sera. Commandement incontinent, compagnon.
Aime besoin.
Soyez express. Veichi les
Oyez, Veichi, commandements.
compagnons. Marchette derrière. Si besoin. Avant, dans un tir. Si fait que sera.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orléans with more gold to bolster the army.
As-tu besoin de faire? Giovanni Basti. Lors Batige Sestu. Giovanni Basti.
Manuel assouvi. Belle œuvre. Manuel assouvi. Belle œuvre.
Oyez, tous le monde. Bonne besoigne de fect. Si, comme volets.
Soyez express.
Compagnon.
À mon cri, avant. Présence, bien ordonnée. Allons, ce sens plus attendre. Compagnon, marchette derrière. À mon cri, avant. Présence, bien ordonnée. Pex, veichi les commandements.
Le Versailles, archir. Le Versailles, archir. Le Versailles, archir. Le Versailles, archir. Le Versailles, archir.
Oui, Versailles. Compagnon, nos allons.
Commandement in compagnon. Marcel derrière. Allons, ce sens plus actif.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orléans with more gold to bolster the army.
Que ferais-je donc? Where's Archer?
Besoin à faire?
De Archers, prenez de demeurer, Swansland to coin. Archer en la voie.
Chessmets mos aviament, Oberestier.
Annonce! Oh, bien me plaît que ça ouvre.
Oberest au col.
Ayez
Comme il vous plaise. Nos Despartans
The main bridge leading to Orléans had been destroyed by the French to prevent an English onslaught. Jeanne d'Arc had to find another way to cross to the south bank and make her assault on Les Tourelles.
Je fais votre commandement.
On est vers Archer.
Die Schönchen, nos Artinen!
Vex, veici les commandes. Perfect de la zone! C'est fait comme toi! Suite à l'ennemi!
Mais ici, je gagne mon guerre. Un coup cette fois, Saint-Gilles. Avance!
Archer! Prenez votre arme!
Les courriers sont perfects!
Restons sans frais! Prenez ses commandes! Avant!
With the western fort destroyed, the French could safely cross the Loire River by this route.
Je fais votre commandement!
Archer, allons brillement. Archer, allons brillement.
Oh yes, les commandements! Defect sera!
Archer, de demeurer, Swansland to coin. On dégoûte.
Commandement dit...
Voyez bien, compagnon.
Perfect! À la zone! Compagnon! Restons en bataille! J'ai besoin! Les courriers sont
Archer, mets-moi, Archer.
Courez-vous! Transport d'hiver!
Besoin à faire?
Die Schönchen, nos Artinen!
Va jetzt-moi besoin. Bien, bien. Va ici. Puissant, oui. Bastille.
Oi, mestier de moi. Tostia Lores.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orléans, with more gold to bolster the army.
Archer, foyer du commandement.
Les coups
Les Tourelles was the linchpin in the English siege of Orléans, blocking the main supply route to the city. If Jeanne d'Arc could capture it, Orléans would finally be liberated.
Les coureurs sous cette scène. Campénard, reste tous en bataille. Infanterie, avance. Avance sans plus attendre. Je baisse vos commandements. Avance sans plus attendre.
Une obelette parée. Une small obelette, dictez-moi une Versailles.
Je verse devant ce rivage. Campénard, marchez derrière. Je verse de...
Cette messe votre navire, obelestière.
Mestier de muer.
Cuillère est
The king's army drove the hated enemy of France from Les Tourelles. With the main road to the city back in French hands, the English abandoned their long siege of Orléans. Celebrating a momentous victory at the head of the French army, Jeanne d'Arc would forever be remembered as the Maid of Orléans. A medieval army on the march was a city on the move. No expense was spared to keep knights and nobles in the lap of luxury.
Knights lived in luxurious tents called pavilions, which had all of their furnishing, proper chairs and tables and tableware, real beds with fine linens, even wall hangings.
All this furniture had to be transported, and that's on top of what was needed for combat. Weapons and armor needed an army of artisans to maintain them.
The armourer's job on campaign was one of maintenance, constantly repairing, knocking out dents, simply changing straps, or replacing rivets that had broken. If you think of the knight as a race car driver, the armourer is his chief mechanic. Without him, he would not be able to function.
Also following an army was a band of opportunistic civilians, the camp followers. All vying to sell their services and goods to the soldiers. When on the march, most of the thousands of soldiers were mounted. Each knight would have at least 6 horses, all needing grooms, farriers, and fodder.
The royal household brought with them their clerks, their priests, essential for men who feared they might die in battle, and of course, their cooks.
The common soldier subsisted mainly on bread and a thick soup called pottage. It was an altogether different story for the knights.
A knight on campaign would expect the best food. So we have game, we have fine meats, we have fruit when it's in season, always cooked, because food is tied in with health as well. That's very important. And I'm just finishing off a dish here of spiced meatballs with a red wine and pine nut sauce.
French and English armies could be on campaign for months on end, maneuvering and skirmishing until they took to the field for a decisive battle.
You